Hang on one second,
You're
please.
good.
Hey, no, can you just
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Leadway Wealth Builders podcast, where we have a great interview for you today with Mr. Anthony Swain, becoming a top real estate agent in Charlotte. So, before we hop into that, if you haven't listened to this podcast before, my name is Chris Rickenbaugh, and I'm documenting my journey in real estate and business, and also talking a little bit about travel hacking and personal finance. You can find me at leadway.wealth on Instagram and TikTok. And then, if you're listening to this podcast, you know where to find us already. But you can also listen on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podbean. So, with no further no further questions, let's hop into today's episode. Mr. Anthony Swain, how's it going?
Chris, what's up, man? I love the intro. Definitely hyping me up. So it's always good to have a good hype person on your team. But yeah, thank you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a little backstory. So, me and you met back on Bigger Pockets. I was talking about medium term rentals, and I think we
This had to
had a
been like
little.
three years ago, at least.
Oh, yeah. So, and then it's funny how you moved down to Charlotte. Now you're doing your thing as an agent. So, I wanted to ask you. So, give us a little bit of background about what you're doing right now, and then we can hop into how you got there.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember when we met, it was kind of just getting the itch for real estate, and knew I wanted to start investing. I knew I wanted to house hack. So that's probably where we cross connected on the forums. So then my wife and I, we were looking in Charlotte, and we ended up finding an agent. She was great. She helped us find a duplex that her and my wife and I house hack now. And that agent kept saying, Anthony, I think you'd be a great agent, just because I was so involved in the process. And she saw me going up to all the meetups. And finally, I actually decided to leave my previous profession and go all in on agency. And now I'm so happy. Not looking back.
Yeah. So was that Angie or Marissa?
It was Angie. Yeah.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a go-getter for sure. So now you're a part of her brokerage at Monarch Group Real Estate?
Yep. So that was part of it. I was like, Angie, what do I got to do to get this thing rolling? And she laid it all out there for me, and she welcomed me into Monarch, and she's been a great mentor and really hit the ground running. I think a lot of people, I mean, they watch Selling Sunset and all of that. It just seems like it's so easy, and you don't know what to expect getting into it. Fortunately for me, it did kind of start well, and I built some confidence and kind of kept transactions going. But it's not always like that, because I know sometimes in the beginning it's very tough for agents. But I was able to push past that and kind of get to the point where I'm at now.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome to see. I mean, pretty much going from starting a whole new industry, but let's backtrack a little bit. And what were you doing before you got into real estate, and what gave you that push to get into it?
So before real estate, this is going to sound like a crazy turnaround for people, because it's not even sales. I was a nurse for 10 years. And, I think it was through COVID and probably a little after that, just very burnt out. And, I loved helping people, but it was just day in and day out a grind, emotionally, physically taxing, all of it. And one day I was just on a plane. And I was just like, I have to find something where I'm just in more control of my time and just buy back some freedom. And the only thing I could think of was just something that was either like starting a business, which I guess real estate agency is in a way, you're your own
Yeah,
business,
for sure.
but something where it's just more high leverage that, if you do amazing, you perform well, you get rewarded. And then with that reward, you could kind of buy back some time. And that was my whole purpose. And there's a lot of options out there, but since I was already passionate about real estate, I was like, agency seems like at least the first path that I'll go down. And that's what kind of led me to it. And initially, I actually was still doing both. I was doing a little, part-time nursing and trying to do the real estate. And eventually just got so busy. I was just like, one day I just told my wife, I was like, babe, I'm pretty sure I'm going to quit work tomorrow. And I sure as heck did. I walked in and I just told my manager, I'm like, I think I'm ready for my next chapter, and haven't looked back.
Oh, that's so cool. Now, is your wife in real estate too, or what does she do?
Sometimes I wish she was because I feel like we would have that like dynamic duo and conquer the world. But
Hmm.
she just has a different mindset. I mean, she loves beauty. She's still a nurse. She actually works at a med spa now. So kind of
Oh,
did her
cool.
own little entrepreneur thing. But she supports all my endeavors. So I'm fortunate to still have an awesome support system.
Yeah, that's important for sure. I think it's funny, like all the top producers start to mention their spouse as their supporters, and I'm like, I have that now, and I'm like, wow, that's easily number one on like keeping you going, make sure you're on track. So that's really cool to hear. So you know, transitioning into the agent now, you're full time in it. How, are you reading books, or how did you said time was the biggest part of that. And how are you managing the time as a real estate agent? Because all I was ever told, it's like if you want no time in life, become a real estate agent. So how are you managing that?
No, no. I mean, I get that sentiment because there is some days where it's just marathon days and my phone is just ringing off the hook. As fast as it'll ring, the next person's
Yeah.
ringing me back. But there's days where it's a little bit more manageable, and I think a lot of people try to do everything, and I think the sooner you realize, that you can assign different tasks to free up your time to do like, I guess, the highest priority things, and then also just staying ahead of things. So you're like your world's not on fire because you're worried about a deadline the next day. So I think just staying organized and staying on top of things, and then delegating, I think makes it a lot better. But with that being said, in a way, I'm kind of at beck and call 24/7. For my clients if there's like something major going on. So I would say that's the biggest difference is nursing, clocking out,
Hmm.
I'm done. Don't call me, don't email me.
Yeah.
But now it's like kind of checking on the emails, seeing if anybody text or call me. So yeah, definitely an adjustment, but it's a welcomed adjustment. It's not anything that I didn't bring on myself. So it's good problems to have to be busy.
So yeah, do you have any assistants yourself or working with any VAs?
Yeah, I am. So I think in the previous question you mentioned like, is there anybody that's like helped you get to this point? Angie, one for sure, awesome mentor. And then I actually paid for a coach just because I was like, I want to streamline this process, take the elevator to the top flight versus the steps. And the coach has paid dividends, just building a solid foundation. And one day she just texted me like, Anthony, I just saw your pipeline board. You need to hire a transaction coordinator immediately. So like just things like that, like having a transaction coordinator. So basically once you go under contract, kind of loop them in and then they take over, so when the closing attorneys and the other side, if they're asking questions, sending you things, the TC kind of takes some weight off of that. So then I could be out showing homes or calling prospects. And then we do have no, I wouldn't say a VA. I would actually say an assistant from the Philippines, but she does like amazing graphic design. And, if we ever need a brochure made or a template, send it to her. She'll get it done in like 20, 30 minutes. So pretty cool to have the access to that too.
Yeah, that's definitely got to be a big one because so have you read Gary Keller's book, Millionaire Real Estate Agent?
I have not yet.
Ooh.
I think I have it on my list though.
Ooh, killer book. So
Okay.
not being a real estate agent, I was listening to this podcast, Brian Lubin, and he mentioned it, and he's not in real estate, and he's like, this was probably one of the best business books ever. So I read it, and I'm like, it does tie in the agent side of it, pretty heavy, but it's like his playbook for business. And so he's all about leads. So, leading into the next question, it's like, how are you, making those leads? Because I see your Instagram. Every time I open Instagram, you're popping up. And then, so what are you doing to generate those leads?
Um, that's that's a great. I feel like that's the biggest question that everyone always asks. Like, where do you get your leads? I will admit it's actually happened mostly organically through my sphere of influence, and then also social media. So as you just said, like whenever you open it up, you see me, and like I want people to tell me that. So I'm just trying to post regularly, post content that, people don't just flip through. So honestly, if that's hiring a professional media team, which I do for my listings and just some branding content, it gets engagement and it gets me to kind of stay on the top of people's feeds. So I think just standing out from the crowd helps in this industry. So it takes a little confidence. It takes a little thinking outside the box, not just doing like the same welcome to, like just like
Yeah.
the same thing like over and over. So like honestly, every listing video, I'm thinking of like, what can I do next? Like, what can I say next? So I think it's just like standing out from amongst the crowd.
Yeah, the Monarch Group, you guys do a really good job of being on social media. Like I feel like I'm looking at photo shoots or video sessions at least once or twice a week. Is that about how much you guys are doing it?
Yeah, so what we'll do is once a month, we'll do a media day where we all show up at, if somebody has a nice listing, or we'll go to the office. We have a nice new office, kind of like central lounge now. And we'll just do like a full content day. It'll be like 4 or 6 hours of us just like knocking out videos, and then the video team, the editor, that'll like start pumping them out to us, and that's when we share them. And now that you can tag multiple people on Instagram posts, we could all share it on our feeds.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see how the social media is interacting because like you guys are doing, that's why I started the podcast. That's why I'm doing Instagram. It's posting so that when somebody does look you up, you know, that they see what you're doing every single day. So if you're popping up on their feed, something new every single day, you know, you see that you're in it. And that's where I think the world is going. I hear more and more and more about social media. So, you guys are doing a great job over there. So,
I appreciate it, man. I
yeah.
mean, it's reassuring when I hear people, say, "Hey, we're seeing you a lot. We're seeing you a lot." All right, it's working. It's mission accomplished.
Yeah. So with that group, you guys are kind of, your own individual business and you work together in a way. So I'm not on the agent side, but how are you different from the other agents, trying to be a little bit different when it's such a competitive market here in Charlotte?
I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is, people they think Keller Williams, that Allen Tate, here in Charlotte, it's like Henderson Ventures and the agency. So like some of those bigger, like more well-known companies. So I think standing out is just like being more boutique and like having a little bit more niche. So for us, it's investments. And, we do work with, friends and family and helping them with residential sales, but we do work with a lot of investors, and that's just something that some agents just don't want to take on at all, or just don't know. So I think that really sets us apart, just because Charlotte is, I would say, very investment heavy right now, just because there is such an influx of people and the real estate market's moving well. So yeah, I think that's what sets us apart.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was having a conversation yesterday in line at the magistrate's office since I had to be there 6 times this week.
Oh
Um,
man.
yeah, crazy other story, but she was talking about how she's becoming a real estate agent, and I said, "Well, here's one bit of advice. If you want to be an agent and your only lead source is new clients, you're going to have to find 100 clients a year to sell 100 homes, or work with an investor." Or work with 5 investors who buy 20 houses a year. Is that something you mentioned you're working with investors? Is that how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like as you said, investors, they're probably going to repeat the process, especially if you do well. That means they're probably going to do well and do multiple transactions with you. So, I mean, if you're in it for the long game and you're giving them good deals and you're making sure the whole process moves, as expected, and then sells on the back end, then they're probably like, all right, hey, Anthony or Angie or Chris, where's the next deal? I want to do this again. So, I mean, if you can do 4 or 5 of those a year with each person, each investor, it can even be more than that.
Mhm.
It's definitely going to be a lot easier than like what you said, finding 25, 30, however many you want to do, eat like new individuals. So yeah, I think it just adds to your toolbox.
And then being niche focused, you mentioned house hacking because that's kind of where we met. Are you pushing that out there a little bit more for the newer person looking to buy a home that's saying, "Hey, you can house hack this. Hey, you can do a pad split here." Is that one of the niches you're targeting or is getting a little bit more popular here?
Um, it's a good question. I actually thought it would be more popular than it is. I don't think as many people have that same mindset, maybe of like, hey, I'm willing to get through this like little bit of, struggle to kind of get into investing. And um, so believe it or not, yeah, like I thought I would be marketing that more and helping more people, but I have, that was actually one of like my first few transactions, and that was like the reason why they hired me,
Hmm.
was because I had experience in it, but not as much as you would think. I don't know if that's because it's phasing out, or hey, if Charlotte's market's still affordable enough where people don't have to think about that, but I still will advertise it. I'd be like, hey, have you ever thought about house hacking, splitting some of your rooms, renting out some rooms to friends, you know, having a duplex and renting out, the other side on Airbnb. So I'll always mention it and then kind of like let them take it from there.
I feel like that's one of those like red pill, blue pill things like in the Matrix to where it's like once you see it this side, you can only see it this side. To where most people, it's like before, I jumped into real estate, I'm like, I thought the only thing in real estate was, buying a house for yourself and then becoming an agent. So once you read more, it's like this whole other world. So I don't think most people have like taken the red pill to really open their eyes to it. So yeah, that's interesting that
Also,
it's
great analogy, by the way.
yeah.
I hope everyone gets this reference.
Yeah, yeah. I've actually never seen that movie all the way through, but I hear but I know that
Here you are
side of it.
dropping Matrix bombs on people.
Yeah, I'm not that much for nerd, I promise. So other than house hacking, networking, meeting new clients. We talked a little bit about social media about it, trying to bring in more people. Monarch's doing great on social media, but bringing in those new clients for marketing. What are agents doing now? Because I feel like in the past, they would hold open houses, they would do hold these events. So what's working now for newer agents like yourself?
Um, oh man, that's a good question. I feel like everyone can have their own kind of lane that they want to go into. And once upon a time, someone told me this kind of like subsets of agents. So it's like either a farmer, right? And you're kind of just you're sending out mailers, you're getting emails, pulling numbers. There's hunters where they're pulling numbers and cold calling just all day long till they get people that are like willing to make decisions. And then a trapper, which is kind of like a little combination of both. And I think that's what I'm trying to be. So just being a magnet where people want to work with you. So just doing an amazing job, being on social media, getting people to reach out to you. And then once they're in your sphere of influence, it's like they won't work with anybody else. They'll tell all their friends to work with you. So I think just creating a system like that, I think really kind of gets your business to kind of keep snowballing. So, I mean, for me personally,
Cool. Well, cool. Well, I know you're a busy guy, so we'll let you get back to work. But Anthony, I appreciate you hopping on for the quick podcast here. And just before we head off, what's the best way if somebody's looking to work with you? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on, man. Definitely always willing to make time for you. But they can find me on Instagram. It's probably the easiest thing. So it's Anthony Swain _ realtor. Connect with me on there. Follow me. Shoot me a DM, and I'm happy to provide any insight that I can.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, for all of our listeners, Anthony, thank you for coming on. And this was another episode of the Leadway Wealth Builders podcast. My name is Chris Rickenbaugh, and we'll see you next time.